You are listening to the podcast To Be Single or Not to Be by Shanna Montana, a podcast where we talk about the single life, dating, and relationships so you can make a decision at the end of each episode and decide to be single or not to be. That is the final question.
This is the To Be Single or Not to Be podcast, and we're doing what? Running it back. Hi, guys, and welcome to the To Be Single or Not to Be podcast with the new Running It Back series. And today we are talking about breakups. Dun, dun, dun. Breakups. Yeah, breakups. And back on May 20th of 2019, we talked about breakups then with an episode titled Breathe Again, Breakups and How Do You Deal? That was a good little Toni Braxton series that I did, a series based off of different Toni Braxton songs. And I think for season 5 of the show, I may bring something back like that. Ultimately, what we want to talk about is in regards to breakups and what our thoughts were then and how they align then with what we think now. And fortunately, I'll say fortunately, a lot of our perspective really is the same, but there were a lot of things that were left unsaid that I think are necessary to say when we talk about conversations present day in 2023 when it comes to breakups, because in the land of social media, we see so much. I said, I recently put this on Twitter, like, what did people do before social media, like before IG stories and Snapchat, before people could like post screenshots and blast each other and then get back together 2 weeks later? Like, what did people do before that existed when a relationship went left? Like, did you just, I'll speak on my own, years ago, 7 years ago, I went through a breakup of an actual relationship. And I remember that was back in the time we did not have social media. So I remember like changing my phone number. I went ghost. I moved. Very few people knew that I moved. I moved to a whole new address. That was back when you were able to literally disappear. And I disappeared for about a strong 3 weeks. I mean, some people knew where I was, but for the most part, the majority of people couldn't get in touch with me. So that was like how I handled it. It wasn't a time where, you could get online and blast everybody or send I guess we had mass text messages back then, but times were just different. It was you were able to kind of disappear, deal with things, and then reemerge when you were ready. And people can still do that now, but people choose not to. And I think because we live in such an age of social media where people are able to show so much of their relationship, which can be a good thing, but I always say choose wisely with that. When a relationship goes left, sometimes there's embarrassment that's associated with that, or sometimes there's just fear of the unknown of am I ever going to find a person as good as them? Because when we leave a relationship, we tend to think that that was the best thing since sliced bread, and many times it was not. So we tend to, whether it be embarrassment, feeling like we're not going to find somebody better, feeling like we may be single forever. Sometimes we may just be really confused about how we should navigate, the breakup waters. And so in that episode of 2019, one thing we talked about that I still feel like holds true today is when it comes to a breakup, I'll tell you, some of the best ways to get over a person and to just process the breakup and move on if that's truly what you want to do, because you have to really be ready to do that. You can't just say I want to break up and not want to take these steps that I'm about to give. So if you're serious about it, and you are going through a breakup, or you're thinking about, doing a breakup, whatever the case may be, doing the breaking up of the relationship, certain things have to take place. And I think that you have to like get right to it. It's almost like ripping the Band-Aid off. You have to understand that this is a situation that is going to end, and there is a chance that someone may not be happy about it. But I will consistently say that you do not need permission to leave a situation. So whether you are doing the ending of it or somebody is ending it with you, once that relationship ends, it's best for you, one, to get right to it, to say, this is it. This is done. We are not moving forward. And we know that many times we do tend to go through that little period or that phase where we're kind of still communicating, still kind of being in touch with one another to figure out what it is we're going to do next. So the next thing I recommend is, once you decide that this is going to be over, you have the breakup conversation. That's what I mean by ripping the Band-Aid off. The next thing is really just going no contact. And I know that's easier said than done. But once you do it, it's so much easier to navigate the waters of a breakup, because once you cut off that communication, meaning that you are not calling or texting them, or you're not receiving their calls or texts, you may have to block the person for a period of time. The next thing would be, removing yourself from their social media. And Instagram does have this beautiful thing now where even if a person is following you, you can go to their page and hit a button where you can make them unfollow you and they don't know it. Meaning in unfollowing any of their friends and family on social media, because that ain't your mama. You love to call mama-in-law or call them mom, that ain't your mama. So make sure you eliminate that. And then just eliminating, the process of trying to figure out what that person is doing, like trying to be in communication that way, like trying to watch their friends' stories or watch what they're doing. Like that's why you have to make sure that you take those steps to remove yourself. Right? So the thing I'll say is that something that I agree with that we talked about back in 2019 that still stands true today is that when it comes to breaking up, what I feel like more people should do that does not happen consistently is that when you are done, just be done and take steps to be done. And I understand that it's not always that black and white. There are going to be periods of time where you may, try to figure out, is this something that we can work on depending on the situation? You may try to figure out, was that the right decision? You may try to figure out, is this something we can reconvene and see if it'll work later on in the future? But ultimately, I would say before you get to the point of the breakup, take the steps to see if any of those variables are an option before the breakup happens. So I'm going to speak from the perspective that all those things have already happened. You've tried every alternative, you viewed every perspective, and you have determined that a breakup needs to happen. So it needs to be quick and dirty. Rip the Band-Aid off. The breakup is happening. It is a conversation and things are going to end now. The next thing that you need to do is to go no contact. And this may mean that you have to block this person on social media, on your phone, or any platform where they can communicate with you. Because if you are going through the process of no contact, and in most instances, just depending on what the breakup was about, even if you are being strong in that, if that person contacts you, you're more likely to go ahead and accept that communication and start to communicate with them, and then it kind of resets your psyche in the direction that you were moving along to get through and over that breakup. Because I think even when you have a really egregious situation where somebody cheats on you or somebody does something really bad to you that causes you to want to go through the breakup, if you are a human being, you're still going to have some kind of feelings there. There's still going to possibly be some love there. So because you are going to be vulnerable in that way due to your emotions, it's going to be easier for that person to try to reel you back in if you allow it. So once you've ripped the Band-Aid off, you've done the breakup, you need to figure out what no contact looks like for you. And I do have another episode up on this YouTube about breakups in that way and those certain steps that you can take. But once you have gone no contact, you then need to figure out what this journey is going to look like of you breaking the habits that you had with that person that you feel like you cannot get over and cannot go on in life without this person, when it was based on not really you liking or loving the person, but just the life that you all had built and the routines that you had that you now feel like, what is life going to look like without them? And really, life is going to look just fine without them. It just takes for you to take some time, whether that's days, weeks, or months. I'm not going to try to put a timeline on it, for you to determine, okay, what direction do I need to go in order for me to now get a new morning routine, for me to now get a new workout routine, because I used to work out with this person, for me to get a new date night routine because now I'm not going out with them on Friday and Saturday nights. I can go out with my friends or I can go out on a solo date. For me to know that when I need some advice or need to call somebody and talk to someone, I can call one of my friends and not call my ex-boyfriend. So it's really breaking those routines and habits. So I agree with what we talked about in 2019, that get into it, getting it done, no contact method, figuring out new habits, new routines, the new direction of your life, and then going through the process of grief. There are different stages of grief, and I can't call them out right now, but I know that at the end of the day, there are 5 stages of grief. And you can go through those 5 stages of grief, and you can actually, let me look up since I do have access. Let's see. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So you want to go through the different stages and understand that it doesn't always work linear. Like, you can go through the stages and then regress and go back to a stage that you thought that you were over. But ultimately, once you get through the stages and you get to acceptance, that is the place where you want to be, to recognize that, and what I was going to say earlier was that you want to go through the stages of grief, but understand that once you reach the acceptance stage, that is when you are going to realize that eventually comes eventually, and that you will always be okay. And I always rest in that. And I also rest in this, that whether I was the wrong party or not, every relationship I've been in where a breakup happened, I can promise you, that man tried to stroll back around and holler at me again. It never failed. So these niggas come back around. You just got to be strong enough to know that I ain't gonna accept for it to come back around. It's not what I need to be doing. But the biggest thing is just knowing that, you're gonna be okay at the end of the day. And you have to rest in knowing that no matter how much it may hurt, because I've been guilty of one time. I put off a breakup for a really long time. The relationship was dead, expiration date had been past 86, that relationship. And I just kept putting it off because I know how bad breakups can hurt. And I kept saying, like, I don't want to go through that grief. I've been through it before. I don't want to go through those bad feelings. And then when I did it, I felt like this huge weight of like this huge just weight, to make it plain, this huge weight like lifted off of me and just told me that, like, you are okay. Like, it was no hurt, it was no pain. I did not go through the stages of grief. I went immediately from the breakup to acceptance to moving the hell on and saying, get the out my house. That's how that went. So I'm here to tell you, you're gonna be okay and you're gonna come out better on the other side. So the other part that we talked about that I really want to touch on today was in regards to breakups, even before you get there, is that we have to be mindful of that when so we sometimes can avoid a breakup because we didn't do a good job with choosing our partners. We want to be mindful of just choosing a partner when we are bored or when we need something to do. I feel like you have to reach a certain place in life where you have to understand that, and I talked about this on another episode, that sometimes being single may be lonely at times. It may be isolating at times. The season of that may last a little bit longer than we thought or what we planned for. But when you are taking your time to find the partner that is really aligned with you, you can't get distracted and allow things like boredom to make you make a bad decision when it comes to who you're choosing as a partner. Because one of the guests on the show said, basically, I'm bored and he cute and I'm bored. And it's like, you can really go down that path real bad during the summertime, just out here doing something. You drinking tequila shots, you thinking y'all just having a good time, and it turns into some kind of feeling, but it's not a real feeling. It's just that you haven't had affection in a while. You haven't had a partner around you in a while. It's a man that makes you feel good. He look good. He smell good. And now you in a situationship. Or it may even turn to a relationship, but it was based out of boredom. It wasn't based out off of anything real. So that's one thing, it might have been okay in your 20s to play that game, even early 30s, maybe 30, 31. But once you hit like 35 plus, like, nah, that's not a game to be played. So that whole boredom, I was bored, I don't want to hear that. That's the same as, I promise you, I am not a fan of this. I'm not gonna say it's a pet peeve, but I just think it's like one of the biggest fucking lies that women tell when they say, when they're in a toxic or a terrible, toxic, terrible, same thing. When they're in a terrible situation and you ask them, like, why are you still there? Why are you still dealing with them? Girl, it's the D. What? Girl, fuck you. Like, it's the D. Like, it is, I don't care what nobody say. There is no D on this earth that is worth me being in a terrifying, toxic relationship just because some D that 5 to 7 minute session is worth your edges being gone. That 5 to 7 minute session is worth you, looking like you thin as the wind because you stressed out and can't wait to eat. That 5 to 7 minute session, if that long, I'm being generous. That session, that's worth you being out here just losing at life. Like on the show Couples Therapy on Showtime that I talk about. This lady sat there on the therapist couch and this man was cheating on her, doing all kinds of shit to her. And she's like, I am not winning. Well, you are not winning in a situation and you are choosing to say, I'm here for the D. Go to hell. Go to big hell. Go to hell on the megabus. Go to hell on scholarship. Go to hell on the Greyhound. Go to hell on Southwest. Go to hell on Spirit. Because I know that motherfucker take a trip down to hell every now and again. Like, go to hell. Like, it's such a facade. It's such a lie. It's such a lie that you tell yourself. It's a lie that you tell other people and you want us to believe, and y'all have to do better. So and that's how you get caught up in stuff like that, saying I'm here for the D because you bored. He cute and you bored. You ain't had no D in a while. And now, girl, I'm just here for the D. Grow up. Grow up now, bitch. Grow up. Yesterday. Now. ASAP. Chop, chop. Get it together. So yeah. Okay, maybe mad with that. So another thing we talked about was ultimately, how people wound up in these situations where they were going through a breakup. And so another thing that someone talked about was like not being a priority. Like they used to be okay with falling in line. And once they realized that they weren't okay with falling in line, meaning that, everything was not put before them, it became a problem. And so I think that goes back to the conversations of finding out, what does a person have going on in their life, outside of just maybe their 9 to 5. If they work, say, a traditional 9 to 5, and they get off work and it doesn't take up a lot more time, or if they work a job where they work 10 to 12 hours a day, what does that look like? When they get off of work, what do they have to do with that window of time before they go to bed? Are they working out? Do they have a child they have to care for? They have a parent they have to care for? Do they have a business they have to care for? Do they need to care for themselves? Like, what does that look like? What do they normally do on the weekends? Or, how do they spend their time, where when you look at the big picture of their life, how will you fit in their life to be a priority? That goes back to one of the reasons why I do not date men that have children. Children are always going to be the priority, as they should. So that's like me walking into a burning building with no fire extinguisher. Why would I walk into that when I know what I am signing up for? And people can say all day long, because you see it on social media. People say, well, if they implement boundaries with the other parent or with certain things, then you'll be fine. No, no, no. It's beyond the boundary. Because if the kid has an emergency, life got to stop. Because if it was my kid, life's going to stop. So I get it. Life got to stop. And people will try to throw this in. Well, what if they have a parent, like life could stop for other reasons? Yeah, don't try to throw all those exceptions to the rule in there. We're talking real black and white. You have to be able to see, most times if you pull up on a person, if a person pulled up on me right now and says, Shayna, what does your day typically look like? What does your weekend typically look like? How often do you travel personally? How often do you travel for work? What extracurricular things are you into? What do you do for fun? What takes up the majority of the time in your life? Like even right now, I'm spending time, I've dedicated 4 hours after work to recording. These are 4 hours that someone may say, oh, well, you were off work at this time and you started recording. And they may expect that once I'm done recording that we hang out. But the thing is, with something like this, somebody that would know me would know that once you are done recording, it's an enjoyable thing. Don't get me wrong, but once you get done talking for 4 hours, you are exhausted. And especially in a situation like this, on my normal season of the podcast, I have guests on. So I'm not doing all of the talking. I'm kind of hosting. I get to be quiet a little bit. But for this, I'm damn near talking for 4 hours straight. So when I get done, I don't want to talk. Like I don't really want to hang out. I don't really want to do anything. So you have to get with a person that understands that, because if not, if you don't get clarity around that, because I've seen it. I've had family members, friends, all kinds of stuff tell me they get off work. Maybe their job calls for them to, they have extracurricular things they need to do for their kids or for themselves. And then by the time they get home at 10 o'clock at night, the person they're dealing with is like, nah, ain't no way you just not getting home at 10 o'clock. Or why I ain't heard from you all day? Because I was doing shit. So you got to make sure that you are dealing with a person that understands what your entire lifestyle looks like, and if you can be made a priority. And typically the only way that you are going to be made a priority is if this person is in a mindset and a state that they want a monogamous and committed relationship, and they know what it takes to be in that relationship. And then once they have that layer done, you all are talking about, well, what does even, you could have made up your mind and said, okay, I want to be in a monogamous relationship. So it's like, now let's talk about what does that really look like in being in a monogamous relationship. And I think that is the perspective that people sometimes leave out. You could say, oh, well, he doesn't have kids, or he just works one job, and he has time for me. You may think that on the outside looking in, but until you talk about it and you confirm that information, that's not for certain. So the way that you will wind up in a breakup situation is just not making sure that there's a possibility that you can be a priority. Like, where are you on that totem pole? I had a post on my page last year that went super viral. I said last year. I had a post on my page this year that went viral, and it was around a man saying that men make time for the things that they want to make time for. And it was so many men on that post saying that was bullshit, and saying that, if a man I got this going on, my woman got to understand, if I got work, I got this, I got that. And it's like, okay, and even some women were in there kind of defending it. Not a lot, but some. And so what I say to that is this: if you recognize that you have a profession and you have a business and you have all these things going on, where based on the comments I was seeing, you don't have time to date, you don't have time to be on the phone, you don't have time to put energy into a woman, but you want a woman and she should just understand, that really sounds like you should not be dating. Because any woman who says, now there's of course an exception to every rule, but most women want some amount of time. So if you are telling me that in a day that I'm not gonna, well, just over a period of time, I'm not gonna see you regularly. I'm not gonna talk to you regularly. We're not gonna engage regularly because you're so busy. Why the fuck are we in a relationship? Like, that's the whole point, to be in relationship and community and in connection with one another. So that goes back to, don't lie and say you're okay with something when you're really not. And if you're not okay with not being a priority, then don't sign up for that relationship or that situation. So the next thing that we said was that we some additional reasons that people need to evaluate their relationship life so they don't wind up in these situations was breaks. Back then, I feel like I was kind of a fan of, and I'm not gonna say a fan of, but I was kind of okay with taking a break in a relationship, but I'm not a fan of that at all in 2023. I really feel like, as an adult that knows how to communicate, I have to be partnered with somebody who can communicate in a positive way, because I've been with people that can communicate in the most negative, sociopath, narcissistic trait way ever. And I will no longer sign up for that knowingly. Um, but I would say you have to be, I would say, being with a person that can communicate what the issues are. Basically, back up, a person that you both can communicate just regularly about what you want and desire in the relationship. You can communicate with one another. If you see an issue arising or something has come up that needs to be discussed, and you want to figure out what that resolution looks like. But for me, if it gets to the point where it's like, you are saying that you don't want to be with me because you want to see, whatever the case, when you may want to see what it's like if we spend some time away from each other, or maybe you want to see other people, or maybe you just need some space to clear your head. I am not a fan of that. And I will not be with anybody that does believe in that. And it may not be something that somebody tells you up front, but once I get to that point, if the only option for them, and I didn't know this ahead of time, was for us to take a break, that means we're going to just break up. Because the way I view it is that if I'm going to be with you and I'm eventually going to be married to you, when you go through a marriage, everyone knows that you are going to have, peaks and valleys, ups and downs. You're going to go through things. And sometimes life can come at you real fast with a whole lot of shit. And you got all the bullshit happening over here, but you still have your family on the other side and your everyday life that you have to function through. So if you're telling me that you cannot, like, function through the everyday life on one side of the hill, but still be able to navigate these murky waters with me of whatever it is that we're going through, or whatever life is throwing through with us, to the point where we can't stay together and do it, and you need to break apart in order to do so, I don't want any parts of that. And that goes back to something I talked about in another episode, that leadership, that strength, that perseverance, that desire to just, show up in the space that I made a promise to show up in, and to fight this out with a person in a positive way, not fight it out in a toxic way, but just understanding that we cannot control when negative things happen in life. We cannot control when life wants to go to war with us. And at the same time, we still have to function in a healthy way to still be able to survive, to pay the bills, things like that. But I only want to be, and I will only be with someone. I told you I got to say it, and we got to say it in a way that you know it. Don't say you won't, say you will. I will only be with someone that I know who will get in the ring with me to fight a good fight. And if we both decide at some point that fighting the good fight is no longer an option, and that we need to go our separate ways, then that is a different thing. And again, like I always say, a person doesn't need my permission to even leave me. So if you decide that, you want to leave the relationship, like, I'm just taking a break. No, no, no. Once upon a time, I dealt with a nigga that felt like, when we had our situation happen where things were going left and we could see this relationship was ending, he was like, this was down the road. In my mind, I was just taking a break. Well, that means we didn't know each other as well as we thought, because if you thought you were taking a break with me, you were wrong, bitch. Don't we love saying that? So I don't play that break shit. It's like, if you want to be with me, you want to be with me through the fire, through the all right. So if you want to be with me, you want to be with me through the fire. Seriously, like, we are going to go through it. But I think, hopefully, I'm not even going to try to predict that future. I'll just say that and leave it. That's the easiest way. Is that, if we are going to be in this, we're going to figure this out together. And if time gets rough, that goes back to things I say that are like non-negotiables, like a person that's able to give grace, a person that's able to have, ownership and accountability to accept what things are and kind of move on from them. I think typically in my experience, I've dealt with people that have just kind of held on to the past, held on to certain things, didn't know how to move past them. And that was the beginning of the end. So again, not a fan of breaks then. I was more of a fan of breaks then than I am now. But I'm not a fan of breaks at all. And I think that if you're a person that feels like you are about that break life, like really evaluate why. Because many times, if we are saying that we're okay with taking a break, we really just like holding out hope the relationship gonna work out. Like, oh, he just wants to take a break. It's gonna be fine. I'm gonna give him his space for a little while, and then we're gonna get back together. Like we're afraid. We have fear. It's fear based. We don't want the relationship to end. We don't want the person to leave us. So we're gonna just stay in a situation where really we aren't staying in anything, because a break means that person is gone. They really have the freedom. I mean, they do the whole time, but they really are free to go do what the hell they want to do. But if we're sitting there and we're saying, okay, he said he wants to take a break or she wants to take a break, and I'm going to just stick around and wait for them. But niggas got a bad habit of saying, I ain't saying you got to wait for me. I know, I know, I know. But if somebody is saying that we're going to take this break for whatever reason, and I'm going to just see what happens and get back together, that normally is not going to work out well for you. And the other party is, I always feel like if you need a break from me, and we're apart and we're not together and we're not communicating and we're not trying to figure this out, because for me, a break means like a real break. Like I ain't gonna be on a break, and when I did believe in it, and we still like talking on the phone every day. Um, my thing is, if we are separated and you're over there and I'm over here and we're not talking, we're not trying to figure this out, we're not in communication, then how are we gonna fix anything? Like if we take a break for 2 months and we aren't communicating for 60 days, what's magically gonna happen when we reconvene to try to figure this relationship out? Would I just went and got some space and realized that I don't like being around you that much, but this break gave me the strength to come back around? It's gonna be a vicious cycle. If a motherfucker start taking a break on you once and you let them, give them a mile, give them an inch, they gonna take a mile. So not a fan of breaks then, not a fan of breaks now, and I don't think you should be either. So I think that overall, just the thoughts we had then and now align in some ways outside the breaks. But if a breakup is bound to happen, don't fight it. Do not fight. I mean, like, do the work on the front end to try to figure out what it is you can do to salvage or fix or rectify the situation that you're in. But once you have exhausted and used all the tools in your relationship toolkit, and you still have not gotten through to the success of what you see in a relationship, and you recognize that this just is not conducive to either of us being happy, and this is no longer healthy, and this is no longer fulfilling, and this is no longer bringing me the joy that I desire to have in my life, go ahead and pull the plug. So again, I'm not saying this for every relationship, but you'll know if it's for yours. So signing off, yours truly, Shanna Montana.